Who do you consider your idol? An author, a scientist, a film actor, a sports personality, or a YouTuber? Whoever it is, how would you react if you met your idol face to face? What questions would you ask him or her? Our today's chapter, A Visit to Cambridge, tells us about such an experience of a man meeting his idol. The chapter, A Visit to Cambridge, is actually an excerpt from the book Heaven on Wheels by Firdaus Kanga. A journalist and author, it is basically a travel book about his experiences in the United Kingdom. The chapter, A Visit to Cambridge, tells us about Mr. Kanga's experience of meeting Mr. Stephen Hawking, one of the greatest scientists of all times. He is the author of the book A Brief History of Time, which is considered to be one of the biggest bestsellers ever. Here you need to keep in mind that both Stephen Hawking and Firdaus Kanga were wheelchair bound. Stephen Hawking suffered from a degenerative paralysis that confined him to his wheelchair. He couldn't even move his limbs and could only speak through a computer. Firdaus Kanga suffered from brittle bones that tended to break very easily. Kanga says that Cambridge was his metaphor for England. This basically means that Cambridge was the first name that would come to his mind when he thought about England. On one of his trips to Cambridge, he wished to meet Stephen Hawking, who was also differently abled like him. Hawking is called a worthy successor of Isaac Newton. He made a phone call to Professor Hawking from a phone booth. Hawking's assistant set the appointment at 3:30 for half an hour. The prospect of meeting Hawking made Kanga feel excited. Being a differently abled person, he had always been at the other end of people's pity, which made him feel weak. He knew if he met another person who was like him, in this case Professor Hawking, he would feel stronger. Kanga had a wonderful conversation with Hawking. It was not a vividly animated conversation though. Hawking was stuck to his chair, unable to move even a single limb of his body. His only way of communication was to tap on a button and search for words on a computer. The computer would speak that out for him. He would spend minutes in search of a phrase. His mind was beaming with ideas, but he could barely express them. Moreover, the computer-generated voice had no emotion in it. It had no inflection, no shades, no tone, the way you generally hear Google or Alexa speak. This made him helpless, and the anguish or pain was visible. However, he was the most honest person when it came to speaking his mind out. When he was asked whether he felt annoyed when people like Kanga came to meet him, he said yes, without hesitation. However, he compensated this outspoken, harsh reply with the most genuine smile that there could be. Kanga felt like looking at the most beautiful man in the world. Kanga writes that Hawking seemed like a still photograph with his still and limp body, but his eyes were very expressive. Kanga here uses a beautiful metaphor to describe Hawking. Hawking's body was like the glass walls of a lantern through which the flame of his soul could be seen. In answer to Kanga's different queries, Hawking said that he believed there is nothing good about being disabled. That means people should accept their disability, if they have any. People surely show pity to a person with disability. He added that he was not aware that he was a big inspiration for many out there. Kanga understood that as Hawking was confined to his chair with very limited activities, with his world shrunk to merely 4 walls, learning about him being a great inspiration to people wouldn't do much good to him. Hawking then added that disabled Olympics were a waste of time and people with disability should focus on things they are good at. This advice reminded Kanga of an incident from his youth. Once he tried to learn to play a Spanish guitar, but his physical condition made it extremely difficult for him to play the guitar. So one day he dismantled it. As the half an hour promised came to an end, Kanga was ready to leave, but Hawking invited him to stay and have tea with him in the garden. It was a well-spent evening. An hour later, when Kanga left, he was beaming with inspiration. He considered Hawking to be his bravest self, someone he wished to become. Read the chapter through, try to understand what you can learn from the conversation between these two beautiful minds. That's all for today. Thank you.